皆さんこんにちは。私の名前は山口エレノアです。私は、京都府立大学の文学部欧米言語文化学科の准教授を務めています。で、今日は皆さんにちょっと英語でストーリーを話したいと思いますが、私の人生のストーリーと思っていただいたら結構です。Okay, let me begin. When I was a little girl growing up in the north of England, my mother took me to Chinatown in Liverpool. I became very fascinated in the culture and the arts and the language, and I learned so many new things about Asia. After that, I went to my local library. I was a bookworm and I loved books, especially books about art and language and culture. And I found some books about China and about Japan and Korea, and I became fascinated by the language and culture and art even more than before. So gradually, I started to teach myself Chinese. But then I became more interested in Japanese culture and Japanese art because I fell in love with the kimono and ukiyo-e paintings. And so I began my journey into Japanese culture. Growing up in the north of England, there's not much access to Japanese culture. Many of my friends thought I was a bit strange. But I was determined that eventually one day I would visit Japan. For me, it felt very far away, but I really wanted to go. So I made it my mission to come to Japan. How can I get to Japan? I had no idea. So I decided to study the language. My love for art and culture was still there, and I used to paint and draw, trying to copy the images of ukiyo-e and so on. And one of those, I have a photograph. Maybe this is from when I was about 16 years old, very young. It's a bit strange. In the background, you can see a Chinese painting. I actually copied a Chinese painting, and then I decided to try wearing Japanese-style clothes and using a Japanese-style paper umbrella. And this was my first entry into this kind of culture. I also was interested in making clothes, and I tried to make my own yukata. What do you think? At this time, I was about 18 years old. And you can see, maybe it's a bit messy, a little bit untidy. I also was interested in the arts, ukiyo-e, as I said, and my mother was very kind. She let me paint a great big picture on the outside of our house. I tried to make a painting like the kabuki and the images of the samurai in Japan. I didn't finish the picture. I also tried to make a theatre, a paper theatre, paper dolls. And so I used cardboard and cut out some ukiyo-e paintings to make some dolls. After that, I decided I wanted to study language more thoroughly. So I decided to go to Sheffield University to study Japanese. And at Sheffield, I met Sakamoto Ryoma. Not in real life, of course. I met him through the books and the images that I could see in the books of Sakamoto Ryoma. And I learned about his life. And I became very fascinated in why he is still very popular in Japan today. So I wrote my graduation thesis, my dissertation about Sakamoto Ryoma and why he is still popular in Japan. After that, I got my chance to come and work in Japan. And I went to Aomori on the JET program. And there I was able to buy this great big book. This is called Ryoma, Life of a Renaissance Samurai. And this is by an American author, Romulus Hillsborough. And as you can see, it's a very thick book. But I read this story, and it's a kind of novel, an English novel, like the Japanese Shiba Ryotaro novel, Ryoma ga Yuku. This is a kind of English version, but a bit shorter. And so I became more and more fascinated with the life of Sakamoto Ryoma. And I wanted to study more about Ryoma. So after my time in Aomori, I decided to come to Kyoto to study. However, when I got to university in Kyoto, my professor told me, maybe Kyoto is a good place to learn about samurai, but Sakamoto Ryoma has been studied too much. So I thought, okay, I can't study Ryoma. Who can I find to study? And so I discovered another samurai who was a friend of Ryoma, Nakai Hiromu. And I studied about his life, and I learned that he went to Britain in 1866. And so I thought, this Nakai character, I can write about him. And as it turns out, he was a friend of Ryoma, and Ryoma suggested he go to England and learn about Britain. But he was not interested in English. He didn't speak very good English, so maybe he's not a good example for learning languages. However, he could write in Chinese characters, and he wrote many poems in Chinese. And so I decided to translate some of his poetry into English. And eventually I graduated, and I was able to find work. First I went to Aichi, and I continued my studies. Then I came here to Kyoto Prefectural University. And I'm very lucky because my office is in the Rekisaikan building. And just downstairs there are many letters and other documents related to Nakai Hiromu. That is because he was Kyoto's 5th prefectural governor. Chiji desu ne. And so I was very happy when I got my job here. What am I doing here? How did I get here? I think all of my life has been a journey from my interest in Asia, coming to Japan eventually, finding Ryoma, and then coming to Kyoto and continuing my journey with Ryoma and learning about Japanese history and culture and art and language. And now I'm very lucky because I'm able to teach students at KPU. And last year I was able to supervise one of my students with her thesis about British female travelers in Japan. I said earlier that Nakai Hiromu traveled to England. So my journey is a little bit like the opposite of that. So I want to ask you also, where do you want to go? Where is your journey going? Would you like to make KPU part of your journey too? I'd like to see you here. I'd like to welcome you, and maybe we'll see each other soon. Thank you very much.